The pie slipped from Nora Whitcomb's hands before she even understood why her heart had stopped. It struck the porch boards with a sharp crack, spilling warm apples and cinnamon across the worn steps of the old Pike place. The dish broke into white pieces at her boots, but Nora did not bend to save it. She could not move. She could barely breathe. The man standing in the doorway was not just her new neighbor. He was the voice from the letters. For 10 months, Nora had written to a stranger who signed his name only as RH for 10 months. She had folded her grief, her loneliness, and the quiet ache of her heart into envelopes and sent them to a post office box 2 towns away. For 10 months, she had believed that man lived somewhere far beyond her reach, maybe across the plains, maybe in Kansas, maybe anywhere but the empty ranch beside hers. Now he stood 6 feet away, hat in hand, dust on his boots, dark eyes fixed on her like he had seen a ghost. "Nora," he said. Her name sounded different in his voice, not like a neighbor speaking it for the first time, but like a man who had written it in his mind 100 times and was afraid to say it aloud. Nora's hand rose to her throat. "You know my name." His face changed. The color drained from it first, then came the recognition, slow and painful, as if every letter between them had suddenly caught fire in the space between their eyes. "You're NW," he whispered. The wind moved across the porch. Somewhere behind the house, a loose barn door tapped against its frame. A horse shifted in the corral, its bridle rings giving a faint sound in the afternoon quiet. Nora stared at him. "RH." He swallowed hard. "Reed Harlan." The name reached her like a hand through water. Reed Harlan. Not RH, not the faceless cowboy whose words had helped her survive the long nights after Peter's death. Not the man who had written about open-range mornings, empty rooms, and the fear that grief could make a person forget how to live. Reed Harlan. Her neighbor. The man who had moved into the abandoned ranch, beyond her pasture fence 3 days ago. Nora stepped back from the broken pie. "This cannot be." "I did not know," he said quickly. "I swear to you I did not know you lived here." "You wrote that you were leaving Colorado." "I was. I sold what was left of my cattle and came east for a clean start." "In Cedar Hollow." "I bought this place through a land agent. I never saw the owner. I never asked who lived near it." His voice roughened. "Nora, if I had known, I would have told you before I came." That made her look at him sharply. "Would you?" The question struck him. She saw it in his eyes. For months he had written beautiful truths, soft truths, safe truths. He had told her that loss had made him quieter, that he still set 2 cups on the table some mornings before remembering his wife was gone, that he carried guilt like a stone under his ribs. He had told her he feared becoming a man no woman could love twice. But he had never asked to meet. Neither had she. That was what made their letters safe. A man on paper could not reach for her hand. He could not walk past the bedroom where Peter had died. He could not stand on her porch and make her feel like her heart had betrayed the dead. "I should go," Nora said. Reed stepped forward, then stopped himself as if afraid any sudden movement might send her running. "Please do not leave like this." She looked down at the ruined pie. Apples still steamed faintly in the cool air. She had made it that morning to welcome the new neighbor because that was what decent people did in Cedar Hollow. She had used Peter's old recipe, the one with brown sugar and a small pinch of clove, because it was the only pie she knew by memory. She had worried about meeting the new man next door. She had not imagined meeting the man who knew her deepest sorrows. "You read my letters," she said, almost accusing him. His brow tightened. "Every one." "Then you know things no man in this town knows." "Yes." "You know I cried on the kitchen floor the first Christmas after Peter died." Reed's eyes softened. "You know I kept his coat on the peg because I could not stand the wall looking empty. Yes. You know, I wrote that sometimes I wanted to sell the farm and disappear. I know, he said gently. And you know, I once slept in my barn for 3 nights because I could not bear the quiet in my own house. Nora shut her eyes. She did know. She remembered that letter. She remembered sitting at her kitchen table past midnight, lantern low, tears dropping on the page because his loneliness had sounded so much like her own. That was the trouble. She had never written to him like a widow writing to a stranger. Not really. She had written to him like a woman reaching across the dark, hoping someone would reach back. And he had. Again and again. When she opened her eyes, Reed had lowered his gaze to the broken dish. "I can pay for the plate," he said. A startled laugh almost escaped her, but it broke before it reached her mouth. "That is what you are worried about." "No," he looked up. "I am worried that the best thing that has happened to me in years just dropped a pie on my porch and is about to walk away forever." Nora's breath caught. The words were plain. No poetry, no careful ink, no folded page between them, just a man standing in a dusty doorway with his heart showing through the cracks of his composure. "You do not know me," she said. "I know more of you than any neighbor should." "That is different." "I know," his voice lowered. "On paper we could be brave." "And in person?" "In person I am terrified." That honesty hurt more than any charm could have. Nora looked past him into the house. The front room was barely settled. A rolled bedroll sat near the wall. A crate of tin plates rested beside the hearth. One lamp burned on a small table, though the sun had not set yet. It made the room look lonely. Too lonely. She hated that she noticed. She hated that she cared. For 2 years after Peter's passing, she had kept her life narrow and orderly. Morning chores, market days, church on Sunday, supper alone, letters to RH when the house felt too full of silence. Now the silence had a face. "I need time," she said. Reed nodded, though disappointment moved across his features like a shadow. "Of course. I do not know what this means." "Neither do I. I do not know if I can speak to you the way I wrote to you. I would not ask that of you today." Today. The words settled between them. Nora gathered her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Then do not follow me." "I will not." She turned, walking carefully down the steps, avoiding the apples, the broken dish, the mess their impossible meeting had made. She crossed the yard with her back straight and her heart pounding like hoofbeats. When she reached the gate, Reed's voice came after her. "Nora." She stopped, but she did not turn. "If I write tonight," he said, "will you read it?" The question nearly broke her. They were neighbors now. He could cross the field in 5 minutes. He could knock on her door. He could say whatever he wished under the open sky. But a letter still felt safer. A letter gave her time to breathe. A letter did not look at her with wounded brown eyes. Nora gripped the gate latch until her fingers trembled. "One letter," she said. Then she walked home without looking back, afraid that if she saw him standing there among the broken pieces of her pie, she might forget every reason she had for running. That night, long after the lamps were out, Nora sat at her kitchen table in the dark, listening to the wind move through the cottonwoods. Across the pasture, a single light burned in Reed Harlan's front window. And by morning, a white envelope waited in her mailbox. With her name written in the hand she knew better than any face in Cedar Hollow. Nora did not open the letter at first. She stood beside the mailbox with the morning light touching the frost on the grass, the envelope held between her fingers as if it were something alive. Reed's house sat quiet across the pasture. Smoke rose from his chimney in a thin gray line. One of his horses stood near the fence, dark head lowered, tearing at the winter-browned grass. Everything looked ordinary. That was what frightened her most. The world had not changed. The sky had not cracked open. Cedar Hollow still smelled of dust, wood smoke, and cold earth. Somewhere down the road, the blacksmith's hammer rang twice. A wagon rolled past the church road. Life went on as if Nora Whitcomb had not discovered that the man she had been writing her heart to for 10 months now lived close enough to hear her screen door shut. She slipped the letter into her apron pocket and went inside. The kitchen looked the same as it had the night before. Clean table, blue curtains, iron stove, Peter's coffee cup still on the top shelf where she never used it but never moved it either. She touched the pocket where Reed's letter rested and tried to make herself busy. She kneaded bread dough too hard. She swept the same corner 3 times. She put water on for coffee, then forgot to add coffee. By the time the sun had climbed above the cottonwoods, she could not stand it anymore. She sat at the table, unfolded the envelope and read. Dear Nora, I am writing this because I promised I would, and because I am afraid if I walk to your door, I will say too much or not enough. Yesterday, when you stood on my porch, I felt like every mile I ever rode had led me to a place I was not brave enough to imagine. I know that sounds foolish. I know we are not young people chasing dreams at a dance hall. We are 2 grown souls who have buried someone we loved and learned how quiet a house can be afterward. Still, when I saw your face, I knew you. Not fully, not the way a man should before he speaks of anything tender, but I knew the courage in your eyes because I had seen it in your words. I knew the sadness you try to hide because I have been trusted with it. I knew the way you stood like you were ready to run because I have stood that way myself. I did not come to Cedar Hollow looking for you. I came here to stop running from my own past. That is the truth. But now that I have found you, I do not know how to pretend you are only my neighbor. I will not hurry you. I will not ask for more than you can give. If all you want from me is a fence line wave and a letter once in a while, I will accept it. But I need to tell you one honest thing. The woman who wrote those letters to me gave me back pieces of myself I thought were gone. If she is standing across the pasture now, then I am grateful and afraid in equal measure. Your neighbor. Read Harlan. Nora read it once. Then she read it again. By the 3rd time, her eyes had blurred so badly that the words swam together. She laid the paper flat on the table and pressed both hands over it. The house was too quiet around her. It seemed to be listening. Peter's coat still hung near the back door, brown wool faded at the elbows. His boots sat beneath it, polished long ago and never worn again. For 2 years, everyone in Cedar Hollow had treated Nora as if grief made her holy. They lowered their voices around her. They carried pies to her door. They said Peter would have wanted her to be strong, then watched closely to make sure she stayed exactly as she had been on the day he died. A widow could be pitied. A widow could be respected. But a widow falling in love again became something people wanted to judge. Nora folded the letter carefully and stood. She meant to place it in the drawer with the others, tied in a blue ribbon, hidden beneath old receipts and sewing thread. Instead, she carried it to the stove and held it near the flame. If she burned it, this would become easier. Reed would be just a neighbor, a man with tired eyes and a broken pie dish on his porch. She could nod at him in town. She could never answer him again. She could keep her life small, quiet, safe. The edge of the paper warmed between her fingers. Then she pulled it back. No, she whispered. She returned to the table, took out a fresh sheet and dipped her pen. Dear Reed. She stopped there. The name looked strange on the page, too real, too close. She tried again. Dear Mr. Harlan. That felt colder than truth. With a small, helpless sigh, she scratched it out and wrote what her heart had already chosen. Dear Reed, I read your letter. I should tell you it frightened me because it did, but it also brought me peace, and I do not know what to do with that. Yesterday, I wanted to run because the letters had been a room where grief could speak without shame. Seeing you made that room have windows and doors, it made it possible for someone to come in. I am not ready for much. I do not know what I am ready for, but I think I could share coffee on a porch if we let it be only coffee. She paused, pressing the pen to the paper until the ink made a dark spot. Then she added, Tomorrow afternoon, my porch. No promises beyond that. Nora. She sealed it before she could lose her nerve. The walk to Reed's mailbox felt longer than the trip to the church in a storm. She kept her head down, her shawl pulled tight, her boots leaving soft marks in the damp road. Reed was not in sight when she reached his fence. For that she was grateful. She slipped the letter into the box and turned to leave. A floorboard creaked behind her. Nora looked up. Reed stood near the barn holding a coil of rope in one hand. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms and dust clung to the knees of his trousers. He must have been mending tack or checking the stalls. He did not call out. He did not move toward her. He only stood still, giving her the distance his letter had promised. That made something inside her soften. She gave him a small nod. He removed his hat, slow and respectful. No smile, no pressure, no claim. Just a man accepting the first fragile inch of trust she had placed between them. The next afternoon, Nora nearly canceled 3 times. She set out 2 cups, then put one away. Then she set it out again. She brushed flour from her sleeves, changed her dress, changed it back, and finally tied her hair with a plain ribbon because she was angry at herself for caring how she looked. Reed arrived at exactly 3. Not a minute early. Not a minute late. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps with his hat in his hands. Afternoon, Mrs. Whitcomb. The formal name made her mouth twitch despite her nerves. Afternoon, Mr. Harlan. His eyes lowered to the floorboards where the pie had not shattered because this was her porch, not his. I brought something. He held out a small cloth bundle. Nora took it carefully. Inside were 3 pieces of white ceramic, cleaned and wrapped like something precious. My pie dish, she said softly. I found the rest of it this morning. I can mend it if you want. I'm fair with glue and wire. It won't be pretty, but it might hold. Nora touched the broken pieces. Peter had bought that dish at a town auction during their first year of marriage. It had never been valuable, but it had belonged to a life she knew how to understand. You did not have to save it. I know. Then why did you? Reed looked at her, and the afternoon seemed to grow quieter around them. Because it broke at the exact moment the truth came out. I figured things like that ought not be swept away too quickly. Nora's fingers tightened around the cloth. She wanted to say something sharp to protect herself. Something practical. Something like a broken dish was just a broken dish, and men should not speak as if every little thing carried meaning. But every little thing did carry meaning. That was the trouble with loneliness. It made a saved piece of ceramic feel like a confession. She stepped aside. Coffee is ready. They sat on opposite ends of the porch, with the little table between them like a peace treaty. Reed held his cup in both hands, though the coffee was hot enough to steam. Nora noticed the scar across one knuckle. She remembered him mentioning it in a letter, saying he had gotten it from a frightened horse the year after his wife died because he had been too tired to move out of the way. Now the scar was real. So was the man. For a long while they spoke of harmless things, the weather, the road into town, the state of the Pike barn roof. Reed asked where the best place was to buy feed, and Nora told him not to trust Mr. Bell's first price because he always started high with new folks. Reed smiled at that. It changed his whole face. Nora looked down into her coffee. "You smile less in person," she said before she could stop herself. His smile faded, but not with hurt, more with surprise. "I suppose paper makes a man braver. You were sad in your letters, but sometimes you were funny. I can try to be funny now, but I warn you, most of my jokes upset horses." A small laugh escaped her. It startled them both. Reed looked at her as if the sound had warmed him. Nora turned toward the yard, embarrassed by how much one laugh revealed. The cottonwoods moved lightly in the wind. Her old mare, Buttercup, grazed near the fence, tail flicking at flies that were not there. "Do you feel guilty?" she asked. Reed did not pretend to misunderstand. "For sitting here with you?" "Yes." He looked into his cup. "Yes." The honesty opened something between them. Nora nodded slowly. "So do I." "Peter." She drew a breath. "He was a good man." "I believe that." He was steady, kind, never raised his voice except once when a snake got into the washroom. A faint smile touched her mouth, then faded. He deserved longer. So did Elise. Reed's wife. Nora knew her name from the letters. Elise Harlan, who had died during a fever winter in Colorado, leaving Reed with a ranch full of cattle and a house he could no longer enter without feeling accused by every empty chair. "Did she like coffee?" Nora asked. "She hated it, said it tasted like burned dirt, drank it anyway when the mornings were cold." Nora smiled sadly. Peter put sugar in his until it was more candy than coffee. For the first time, speaking of the dead did not feel like standing in a graveyard. It felt like opening a window in a room that had been shut too long. Reed leaned back in his chair. "Maybe we are allowed to remember them without staying buried with them." Nora's throat tightened. She did not answer. A wagon rattled on the road and both of them looked up. Mrs. Ada Pritchard from the Mercantile Road passed with her grandson beside her. The old woman's eyes went straight to Nora's porch, then to Reed, then back again. Her mouth tightened with the quick satisfaction of someone who had just found tomorrow's gossip. Nora's spine stiffened. Reed saw it. "I can go." "No." The word came out sharper than she expected. Mrs. Pritchard's wagon disappeared around the bend, but the damage had already begun. By supper, half of Cedar Hollow would know that Widow Whitcomb had taken coffee with the new cowboy from the Pike Place. By Sunday, they would add more to it. By next week, they would make it sound like sin. Nora set her cup down with a trembling hand. "People will talk. They usually do. They will not be kind." Reed's expression darkened with old knowledge. "Then I will give them nothing to say against you." "You cannot control what people say." "No, but I can control how close I sit, how often I come, how careful I am with your name." The gentleness of that nearly undid her. Before she could speak, a rider appeared at the far end of the road, coming fast from town. Dust rose behind the horse in a pale ribbon. The rider slowed near Nora's gate and swung down with a folded paper in his hand. It was Samuel Briggs, the postmaster's nephew, red-faced from the ride. "Mrs. Whitcomb," he called, glancing uneasily at Reed. "Telegram came for Mr. Harlan. Aunt Helen said he might be here." Reed stood. Nora watched his face as he took the telegram. Something in his posture changed before he even opened it, as if his body recognized trouble by the weight of paper. He unfolded it. The color left his face. Nora stepped forward. "Reed." His eyes stayed on the message. Then he looked toward the road, toward town, toward whatever past had found him at last. "My brother is coming," he said. Nora felt the air turn cold. "I thought you said you had no family left." Reed folded the telegram with a hand that was not steady. "I said I had no family I trusted." Reed left Nora's porch with the telegram folded in his fist and the look of a man who had just heard hoofbeats from a grave. Nora watched him cross the yard toward the pasture fence, his steps stiff, his shoulders tight beneath the worn brown coat. The afternoon coffee still steamed on the table between the two empty chairs. A few minutes ago, they had been speaking of grief like two people learning how to breathe near each other. Now the air felt sharp again, cut open by a name Nora did not know, and a truth Reed had kept from every letter. "My brother is coming. I said I had no family I trusted." Those words followed her into the kitchen. She tried to wash the cups, but her hands were clumsy. One cup slipped against the basin and struck the iron edge hard enough to make her flinch. She set it down and stood there, looking out the window toward Reed's place. He had told her so much in 10 months. Or she had thought he had. He had written about his wife, Elise, about the fever winter in Colorado, about selling cattle after bad weather and worse luck, about the empty house, about guilt, about loneliness, about the way a man could carry memories like stones in his pockets until he was too tired to stand. But he had never once mentioned a brother. Not one line. Not one name. The omission sat inside Nora like a cold seed. She wanted to be fair. Every heart had locked rooms. Lord knew she had her own. There were things about Peter's last night she had never written, even to Reed. There were thoughts she had buried because saying them aloud felt like betraying the dead. But fairness did not quiet the fear. A man could hide pain. A man could also hide danger. By sundown, Cedar Hollow had begun to glow with lanterns. The road went soft and gold beneath the last light. Nora fed Buttercup, checked the hens, and carried kindling inside. All the while, her eyes kept drifting toward the old Pike place. Reed's lamp burned late. At 8:30, she saw him leave his house and walk to the barn. A lantern swung from his hand. He stayed there a long time. Once, she heard the dull thud of wood striking wood, like a crate being dragged or a stall door being shut harder than needed. Nora wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stood at her back door. She should stay home. She should let him come to her when he was ready. She should remember that their first coffee had already been enough for one day. Instead, she took a lantern from the hook and walked across the pasture. The ground was damp under her boots. Crickets called from the ditch. The moon had not risen yet, and the world between their houses seemed wider in the dark than it had in daylight. When she reached Reed's barn, she found him standing beside a half-open trunk. He looked up fast, one hand going instinctively to his side, though he wore no gun there. The motion told her more than he meant it to. "I did not mean to startle you," Nora said. His hand fell. "You should not be out walking alone at night. I have lived on this farm for 12 years. That does not make darkness kinder." "No," she said, stepping inside, "but secrets make it colder." Reed's jaw tightened. The lantern between them threw soft light over his face. There was shame there, and fear. Not the kind of fear a man felt for himself, but the kind he felt when someone else had come too close to the worst part of him. Nora glanced at the open trunk. Inside lay old papers, a woman's blue ribbon, a silver pocket watch, and a photograph with its corner bent. She could not see the people in it clearly, but she saw enough. 2 young men stood shoulder to shoulder beside a painted sign that read Harlan Brothers Stock Company. One was Reed, younger, thinner, with less sorrow in his eyes. The other man had the same dark hair, the same strong jaw, but his smile was quicker. Too quick. Handsome in a way that would make people trust him before they knew better. "His name is Wade," Reed said. Nora looked back at him. "Your brother." My older brother. The telegram said he is coming. Reed gave a humorless laugh. No, the telegram said he is already on the way. Wade never sends warning unless he wants a man restless before he arrives. Why would he want that? Because he enjoys knowing he still has power. Nora stepped closer, careful, as if nearing a wounded horse. What did he do? Reed's eyes lowered to the photograph. For most of my life, I thought Wade was the better Harlan. Quicker with words, easier with people, better with money. Our father favored him, and I did not question it. When we started the cattle company, Wade handled buyers and contracts. I handled land, stock, and work that kept a man's hands dirty. That sounds like trust. It was. Reed touched the edge of the photograph. Until I learned trust can be used like a rope. Nora said nothing. She let the silence ask for her. Reed drew a slow breath. After Elise died, I was not right in my head. I signed papers without reading them, sold cattle for less than they were worth, paid bills Wade said we owed. I thought he was helping me hold the ranch together. He was not. He was stripping it piece by piece. Reed's voice hardened. He took loans in the company name, sold stock twice to 2 different buyers, used my signature on contracts I never saw. By the time I woke up enough to understand, the Harlan name was mud from Colorado to Nebraska. Nora felt the old fear deepen. Did people think you were part of it? They still do. The answer was quiet, too quiet. She looked at him then, really looked. Dust on his boots, weariness in his shoulders, a man who had not only lost a wife but a name. Why did you not tell me? His eyes lifted to hers. Because your letters were the only place I was not that man. The words struck her hard. Reed turned away, bracing one hand against the stall post. A horse shifted nearby, breathing softly in the shadows. When I wrote to you, I could tell the truth about Elise. I could tell the truth about loneliness. But every time I tried to write about Wade, the words turned to ash. I did not want to see your handwriting change after that. I did not want pity. I did not want doubt. Most of all, I did not want you to wonder if the man answering your letters was a thief. Nora's fingers tightened around her lantern handle. Are you? He turned back at once. The hurt in his eyes came sharp, but he did not hide from the question. No. One word. Steady as a nail driven into oak. I have made mistakes, he said. I trusted the wrong blood. I signed what I should have read. I ran instead of staying to clear my name because grief made me weak and shame made me weaker. But I never stole from anyone. I never cheated a buyer. I never forged a contract. Nora believed him. That frightened her almost as much as doubt would have. Because belief was not proof. Belief could cost a woman dearly. She thought of Peter, of how simple life had been with him until it was not. She thought of the town, of Ada Pritchard's watchful eyes, of how fast gossip could make a woman's front porch feel like a courtroom. If Wade Harlan came to Cedar Hollow carrying old accusations, the whispers would not stay at Reed's fence. They would cross into her yard too. Why is Wade coming now? She asked. Reed picked up the telegram and handed it to her. Nora unfolded it beneath the lantern light. Heard you settled in Georgia. We should talk before your neighbors learn what kind of man bought the Pike place. Arriving Friday. Wade. Friday. 2 days away. A chill moved over her arms. He means to threaten you. He means to own me again. Can he? Reed smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Not if I have anything left to say about it. Nora looked at the trunk, at the old papers. Is there evidence in there? Some, not enough. Old ledgers, buyer letters, a bank notice with Wade's handwriting on it. Nothing a judge would call a clean answer. But enough to show he lied. Maybe. Reed closed the trunk halfway. I came here hoping to find work, build quietly, pay back what debts had my name on them even if I did not make them. I thought if I kept my head down, Wade would lose interest. Men like that do not lose interest, Nora said. Reed studied her. You sound certain. Nora's gaze dropped. She had not meant to speak so quickly. She turned the lantern a little, watching the flame bend inside the glass. Peter had a cousin, she said. Lyle Merrick. He borrowed money from Peter more than once, always with a story, always with a promise. When Peter finally said no, Lyle started telling folks my husband had turned proud, that I was the one keeping him from helping family. Reed's eyes sharpened with concern. I never told you that. No. He came to the house after Peter died, said there were debts Peter owed him. There were none, but grief makes a woman look easy to corner. Her voice lowered. I learned then that some men do not steal with a gun. They steal by making honest people too tired to fight. Reed looked at her for a long moment. That is why you understood my letters, he said softly. Partly. And the other part. Nora met his eyes. The other part was that I was lonely. The admission felt like opening her hand and showing him something fragile. Reed's face changed, not with victory, not with hunger, with tenderness so careful it hurt. Nora. She shook her head before he could say more. Do not make that word heavier than it already is. I was not going to. Yes, you were. A faint smile touched his mouth. Maybe. For one small breath, the barn did not feel like a place full of old sins. It felt like shelter. Then hoofbeats sounded on the road. Both of them stilled. Reed moved to the barn door and looked out. Nora followed, holding the lantern low. A rider passed beyond the fence, traveling toward town. Too dark to see his face, too late for ordinary business. His horse moved with purpose, and he did not slow at the Harlan gate. Reed watched until the rider disappeared. Wade, Nora whispered. No, Reed's voice went cold, but I know the horse. Whose? Man named Silas Creed, used to ride with my brother. Nora's stomach tightened. The road went silent again, but it no longer felt empty. Reed turned to her. You need to go home. I can decide that myself. Nora, if Silas is here, Wade is closer than he said. This is not gossip. This is not a misunderstanding over coffee. My brother brings trouble the way storm clouds bring rain. And you plan to face it alone. I have faced worse. She looked at him, at the proud lift of his chin, at the fear he was trying to bury under stubbornness. No, she said, you have survived worse. That is not the same as facing it. His expression faltered. Nora stepped closer. I will not pretend I am not afraid. I am. I am afraid of your brother. I am afraid of what people will say when his lies reach town. I am afraid that trusting you may cost me the quiet life I built after Peter died. Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze. But I am more afraid of becoming the kind of woman who sees a good man standing in trouble and shuts her door because it is safer. Reed's eyes darkened with feeling. You think I am a good man? I think I am trying to find out. The corner of his mouth lifted sadly. Fair enough. A gust of wind pushed through the barn, making the lantern flame jump. Nora reached to steady the glass at the same moment Reed did. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled away at once. It was not a kiss, not a promise, not even an embrace. But in that small brush of skin, Nora felt the danger of him more clearly than ever. Not because he might ruin her, but because she might choose him even with ruin waiting at the gate. Reed slowly took his hand back. I will walk you home. She wanted to refuse. Instead, she nodded. They crossed the pasture side by side, with enough space between them for propriety and not nearly enough for Nora's peace. At her porch, Reed stopped at the bottom step. "Lock your doors tonight," he said. "I always do." "Lock the back one too." Her eyes narrowed. "You are making this worse." "I am trying to keep you safe." "Then stop treating me like I am made of glass." Reed's voice softened. "I never thought you were glass, Nora. I think you are a lantern, and men like Wade enjoy putting out light." That silenced her. For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the dry grass. Then, from the road near town, a dog began barking wildly. Once, twice. Then came the distant crack of a gunshot, not close enough to strike them, but close enough to make Reed step in front of Nora before she had time to think. Her heart slammed against her ribs. A second sound followed. A horse running hard. Reed looked toward the darkness beyond the gate, his jaw set, every gentle part of him gone behind something sharp and ready. Nora whispered, "What was that?" Reed did not look away from the road. "A warning," he said. And before Nora could answer, a dark horse came into view at the edge of her lantern light, riderless, sweating, with a torn saddlebag hanging from its side. On the leather flap painted in white were two letters. W.H. The riderless horse stopped at Nora's gate with steam rising from its dark body. For several seconds, neither Nora nor Reed moved. The animal stood trembling in the lantern glow, eyes wide, reins dragging in the dust. One stirrup hung loose. The torn saddlebag slapped softly against its flank with every nervous shift. W.H. The letters looked small from the porch, but they carried enough weight to change the night. Reed moved first. "Stay here." Nora caught his sleeve. "No." His eyes flashed toward her. "Nora, if that horse belongs to your brother, then standing on my porch will not make me safe." A muscle worked in his jaw, but he did not argue. He took the lantern from her hand and walked slowly toward the gate, speaking low to the frightened animal. The horse threw its head once, then settled when Reed reached for the reins. Nora followed 2 steps behind, close enough to see Reed's hand run along the horse's neck, checking for injury. There was no blood, no wound, only sweat, fear, and a saddlebag torn as if someone had pulled at it in haste. Reed lifted the flap. Inside were a few papers, a small pouch of tobacco, and a folded handbill damp at the corner. He held it near the lantern. Nora leaned closer. The handbill had been printed in bold black type. Wanted for fraud and theft. Reed Harlan, former partner of Harlan Brothers Stock Company, suspected of cheating cattle buyers across Colorado and Nebraska. Reward for information leading to arrest. The name seemed to rise from the page like smoke. Nora felt her stomach twist. Reed did not speak. He stared at the handbill as if he had seen it before in nightmares. "Is it real?" she asked. His mouth tightened. "Real paper, real ink, false claim." "But it says wanted." "It says suspected." He folded it hard enough to crease the paper. "Wade has printed these before. Not official law, just enough to scare people and stain my name before I can speak." Nora looked toward the road. "Then why send the horse?" Reed's eyes moved into the darkness. "To make sure we knew he was close." The wind moved over the road with a dry whisper. Somewhere far away, another dog barked and then went silent. Reed tied the horse to Nora's fence and pulled the saddlebag free. "I should take this animal back to my barn." "At this hour?" "I need to see if Sila's is nearby." "You need to not walk into a trap." He looked at her then, and something passed across his face that was half frustration, half reluctant admiration. "You have a way of saying the thing I do not want to hear." "Good, someone should." Before Reed could answer, a lantern appeared down the road near the bend. Then another. 2 men were walking toward them, their shadows long across the dirt. Nora recognized the first by his heavy stride and round shoulders. Sheriff Amos Bell. The second was younger, thin-faced, carrying a rifle pointed down, Deputy Hart. Reed stepped away from the gate, hand open at his side. The sheriff's gaze moved from Reed to Nora, then to the horse. "Well," Sheriff Bell said, stopping outside the fence, "seems trouble found the Pike place faster than I expected." Reed's expression hardened. "You expected trouble." "Got a message at the office before supper. Said a wanted man had settled outside Cedar Hollow under the name Reed Harlan." Nora's breath caught. Sheriff Bell held out his hand. "You got papers on you, Mr. Harlan." Reed did not move. Nora stepped forward. "Sheriff, that handbill is not lawful proof of anything." The sheriff looked at her with tired eyes. "Mrs. Whitcomb, I know you have been through enough in this town, but I would advise you to let me do my work." "I am asking what your work is." "My work is to keep Cedar Hollow from becoming a hiding place for cattle thieves." Reed's face went pale with anger. "I am not a thief." "Then you will not mind answering questions." The deputy shifted his rifle. Nora saw Reed notice it. His shoulders straightened, and she knew at once that pride might lead him into a mistake. She moved closer to the sheriff. "You have known me 12 years, Amos. Have I ever lied to you?" The sheriff sighed. "No." "Then hear me when I say this man was threatened tonight. That horse came riderless to my gate with false papers meant to make you act before you knew the truth." "False according to him." "According to reason," Nora said. "If Reed were hiding from the law, would he settle under his own name?" The sheriff glanced at Reed. That small pause mattered. Reed slowly reached into his coat and withdrew a folded packet. "My bill of sale for the Pike place, bank receipt, letter from the land agent. You can look at those." Sheriff Bell took them. "And the old charges?" he asked. "There are no charges, only accusations my brother spread after he ruined our company." "Your brother being Wade Harlan." Reed's eyes sharpened. "You know him?" The sheriff's answer came too slowly. "He rode into town an hour ago." Nora felt the cold move through her again. "Where is he now?" Reed asked. "At the hotel." "Did he speak to you?" "He spoke to half the saloon first," Sheriff Bell said. "Then brought me that same handbill and said I ought to lock you up before you cheated a widow out of her farm." The insult struck like a slap. Nora's chin lifted. "A widow is standing right here, Sheriff, and she has not been cheated." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Reed turned slightly toward her, his eyes full of warning. He did not want her stepping into the center of this storm. But she already was. If this moment touched your heart, stay with the story, because sometimes love begins not with a kiss, but with someone standing beside you when every shadow says run. Sheriff Bell looked back down at Reed's papers. "I am not arresting anyone tonight." The deputy lowered his rifle a fraction. "But," the sheriff continued, "I want you at my office at 9 tomorrow morning. Bring whatever proof you have about your brother and the company. If Wade Harlan has lied, I want to know it. If you have, I want to know that too." Reed nodded once. "I will be there." The sheriff's eyes moved to Nora. "And you, Mrs. Whitcomb, would be wise to keep some distance until this is cleared." Nora held his gaze. "I have spent 2 years keeping distance from everything that might hurt me. I am not sure it made me wiser." Sheriff Bell said nothing to that. After the men left, the night seemed larger than before. Reed untied the horse and led it slowly toward his barn. Nora walked beside him with the saddlebag tucked under one arm. Neither spoke until they reached the Pike place. Inside the barn, Reed settled the horse in an empty stall, rubbed it down, and checked its legs. His hands were gentle even while his face remained hard. Nora watched from near the door. Wade told the sheriff I would cheat you out of your farm, Reed said. He wanted to make me look foolish before I had a chance to decide anything for myself. He is good at that. Then we will be better at truth. Reed stopped brushing the horse. You keep saying we. Yes. You should not. Nora crossed her arms. You do not get to decide the words I use. I get to warn you what they cost. His voice broke slightly on cost and the anger left her. She saw it then. Beneath the stubbornness, beneath the pride, Reed Harlan was afraid not of losing himself. He had lived through that before. He was afraid of taking her down with him. I am not a child, Nora said softly. I know. I have buried a husband, run a farm, fought off a cousin who tried to steal land through fake debts, smiled at people in town who pitied me more than they respected me. She stepped closer. Do not look at me like I am walking into danger blind. I see it. Reed turned toward her, the brush still in his hand. And you are staying. For now. For now, he repeated, as if the words both hurt and comforted him. Nora gave a small nod. That is all I can promise. It is more than I deserve. She looked at him sharply. Do not say that to me again. His brow furrowed. I mean it, she said. I will not sit beside a man who keeps asking to be punished for trusting the wrong brother and losing the wrong fight. If you want my help tomorrow, stand like a man who believes he is worth defending. Reed stared at her. Then, to her surprise, a quiet smile touched his mouth. You always speak this hard to wounded cowboys. Only the ones who need it. A breath of almost laughter left him. It faded quickly, but she saw how it eased something in his chest. He set the brush aside and went to the trunk in the corner. This time, when he opened it, he did not hide the contents. He lifted out ledgers, bank notes, buyer letters, old receipts, and tied packets of documents with brittle string. They carried everything to the kitchen table. Reed's house smelled of fresh sawdust, coffee, and old emptiness. It had the look of a place waiting to become a home, but not yet believing it deserved one. A quilt lay folded on a chair. A lantern rested beside a stack of plates. His bedroll was still near the wall because he had not yet unpacked fully. Nora said nothing about it. For the next 2 hours, they sorted papers by year, by buyer, by signature. Reed explained the cattle business in plain words, showing her where Wade had handled accounts and where Reed's name had been added later in ink too dark for the age of the page. Nora had kept farm books for years. Numbers spoke to her in a way gossip never could. She saw patterns. A payment marked twice. A loan taken in Denver while Reed's own letter from that week placed him in Colorado Springs, nursing Elise through fever. A buyer receipt signed by Reed Harlan in a flowing hand unlike the tight, careful script she knew from 10 months of letters. This one is not yours, she said. Reed leaned over her shoulder. For a moment his nearness changed the room. His sleeve brushed hers. She caught the scent of leather, pine soap, and cold air on his coat. Her pulse answered before her mind could stop it. He noticed. So did she. Both went very still. Then Reed stepped back, respectful and visibly shaken. You are right, he said, voice rough. That is Wade's copy of my hand. Not a good copy. It fooled men who wanted it to fool them. Nora set the paper aside. Then tomorrow we show the sheriff men can be fooled twice, but not forever. Reed looked at her across the lamplight. What made you so brave? The question landed too close to pain. Nora lowered her eyes to the ledger. I am not brave, I am tired. Of what? Of being careful so other people can be comfortable. She smoothed one page flat. After Peter died, everybody had an idea of what kind of widow I should be. Quiet, grateful, sad in acceptable measures. If I laughed too loud, someone looked surprised. If I wore a blue dress, someone asked if I was feeling better. If I spoke to a man in town, someone found a reason to mention Peter. Reed's face softened. I loved him, she said. I still do in the place where that love belongs, but I am alive, and I think I forgot that for a while because it was easier for everyone else if I did. Reed's voice was low. It is not easier for me. She looked up. His hands rested on the back of a chair, knuckles tense. When you laugh, I want to hear it again, he said. When you speak of Peter, I do not want to erase him. When you stand in my kitchen telling me to defend myself properly, I think God must have a strange mercy, because I did not know a person could make me feel ashamed and hopeful at the same time. Nora's throat tightened. Reed. I know. He stepped back before she could ask him to, too much. Maybe it was. Maybe it was exactly enough. Outside, a horse snorted in the barn. The lamp flame bent in a draught. Nora realized how late it had grown, and how alone they were in his kitchen with shadows pressing against the windows. She stood. I should go. I will walk you. No, she softened the word with a faint smile. Lock your back door too. For a second, he only looked at her. Then he smiled, a real one this time. Yes, ma'am. Nora gathered her shawl and stepped onto the porch. The road lay quiet. No riders, no gunshots, no Wade Harlan waiting in the dust. Yet the night felt like the pause before a storm, not the end of one. At her own house, Nora barred the door and placed Reed's copied signature beside his letters on the kitchen table. She stared at the difference between the handwriting, between the man accused, and the man who had written her grief back into something bearable. By dawn, Cedar Hollow had already begun talking. At the Mercantile, Ada Pritchard told two women that Nora had been seen leaving Reed Harlan's house near midnight. At the saloon, Wade Harlan lifted a glass and said his younger brother always did have a talent for lonely women. And at 9 o'clock sharp, when Reed walked into the sheriff's office with Nora at his side, the entire town square seemed to stop breathing. Wade Harlan was already there. He leaned against the sheriff's desk, polished boots crossed, smile easy as sin. His eyes went first to Reed, then to Nora. Well, Wade said, removing his hat with false respect, I see my brother found himself a witness. His smile widened. Or should I say another widow? Wade Harlan's words settled over the sheriff's office like dust after a hard ride. Another widow. Nora felt the insult before she understood all of it. It was not just a cruel thing to say. It was a rope thrown toward her throat, meant to pull her into whatever ugly story Wade had carried into Cedar Hollow. Reed stepped forward. Sheriff Bell rose from behind his desk. That is enough. Wade lifted both hands in a show of innocence. No harm meant, Sheriff. I was only surprised to see Mrs. Whitcomb here so early. His eyes slid back to Nora. Though I suppose my brother always did have a gift for finding sympathy where it was softest. Reed's jaw tightened. Say one more word about her. Or what? Wade smiled. You'll strike me in front of the law, that would be helpful. Nora saw the trap at once. Reed did too, but anger had already put heat in his face. She touched his sleeve lightly, just 2 fingers against worn cloth. He went still. The small gesture seemed to irritate Wade more than any shouted defense could have. Nora looked at the sheriff. We brought documents. Sheriff Bell nodded toward the chair beside his desk. Put them here. Reed placed the ledgers, receipts, and copied signatures on the desk. Nora laid the cleanest examples on top. Her hands did not shake. She was proud of that. Wade glanced at the papers, then gave a soft laugh. Old scraps and sad explanations. Reed always was good at looking wronged. I was wronged, Reed said. By your own carelessness, maybe. By your forgery. The word changed the room. Deputy Hart, standing near the stove, looked up sharply. Sheriff Bell's heavy brows drew together. Wade's smile remained, but it tightened at the corners. "That is a serious accusation," Wade said. "So is calling a man a thief across 3 states. And yet you keep running." Wade leaned back, casual as a gambler holding a strong hand. "Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, now Georgia. A clean man does not leave that much dust behind him." "A grieving man does," Nora said. Wade turned to her slowly. His gaze was smooth and polished, but there was no warmth in it. "Mrs. Whitcomb, I understand my brother has had time to tell you a very touching story. I understand you have had time to tell the town an ugly one." A faint murmur came from outside the open window. Nora realized people had gathered near the sheriff's office, pretending to pass by, pretending to tie horses, pretending not to listen. Wade knew it too. He raised his voice just enough. "I came to warn this town. My brother left debts behind him. Families lost money because of him. Good men trusted the Harlan name and were left with empty pockets." Reed's hands curled at his sides. Nora stepped closer to the desk, "Then name them." Wade blinked. "Pardon." "The families, the buyers, the men left with empty pockets. Name them so Sheriff Bell can wire them and ask for the truth." The room quieted. For the first time since they entered, Wade's confidence flickered. "There are many," he said. "Then one name should be easy." His eyes hardened. "A woman like you should be careful before stepping into business matters she does not understand." Nora felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "A woman like me has managed farm accounts for 12 years, settled an estate, fought false debt claims, and kept herself fed without asking a Harlan man for permission. Try again." Deputy Hart coughed into his fist, hiding something close to a smile. Reed looked at Nora in a way that made the air feel too warm. Wade saw that look and changed tactics. He reached inside his coat and withdrew a folded paper. "If you want names, start with mine. Reed owes me $700 from the dissolution of Harlan Brothers Stock Company." Reed stared at the paper. "That is a lie." Wade handed it to the sheriff. "Sign note, his hand, his debt." Sheriff Bell unfolded it. His eyes moved over the page. "Reed Harlan, $700 payable to Wade Harlan." Nora's stomach tightened. Reed reached for it. "Let me see." The sheriff passed it over. Reed read the note once, then again. His face shifted from anger to something colder. "You pulled this from Father's old account book." Wade tilted his head. "Careful now. This is not a debt note. It was payment division from cattle sold in Denver. 700 was your share, not money I owed you." Convenient memory. Nora held out her hand. Reed gave her the paper. The writing was close to Reed's, but not perfect. The letters leaned too much. The R had a flourish Reed never used. More important, the paper had been cut at the bottom. A narrow strip was missing. Nora turned it over. "Where is the rest?" Wade's eyes narrowed. "The rest?" "This page was cut." She held it toward the sheriff. "See the edge? Something was below the signature." Sheriff Bell took it back and rubbed a thumb along the bottom. "Looks that way." "A man can cut paper for many reasons," Wade said lightly. "Yes," Nora replied, "especially when the line underneath changes the meaning of the line above." The silence after that was sharp enough to hear the clock ticking. Wade's charm thinned. "You are a clever woman, Mrs. Whitcomb. That can be dangerous." Reed moved then, stepping between Wade and Nora so smoothly it looked like instinct. Sheriff Bell's voice turned firm. "Mr. Wade Harlan, do not threaten anyone in my office. I did no such thing." "You came close enough." Wade gave the sheriff a hard look, then laughed as if all of this had amused him. "Fine. Wire whoever you please. Dig through the past if it makes you feel righteous. But while you do, ask one question." He turned toward the window, where the listening crowd could hear every word. "If Reed Harlan is innocent, why did every town he lived in turn against him?" The words struck their mark. Nora could feel it outside, that tiny shift in the people listening. Doubt loved simple questions. Truth often needed more time. Wade put on his hat. "I will be at the hotel, Sheriff. I trust you will keep my brother from leaving town before this is settled." "I have no reason to hold him," Sheriff Bell said. "Not yet," Wade smiled, "but you will." He walked out with polished calm, nodding to the people gathered outside as if he were a gentleman leaving church. Within seconds, whispers rose in his wake. Reed stood unmoving. Nora watched him close himself off piece by piece. His face went still. His eyes lost the warmth she had seen on her porch. Shame moved over him like a shadow he knew too well. "Do not," she said quietly. He looked at her. "Do not let his voice become yours." Sheriff Bell cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitcomb, I will need those handwriting samples you mentioned." Nora opened Reed's letter packet. She had brought only 3, chosen carefully before dawn, letters that showed his script clearly without revealing too much of her heart. Still, when she placed them on the desk, it felt like laying private things before strangers. Reed noticed. "Nora, you do not have to use those." "Yes, I do." The sheriff studied the letter, then the note Wade had produced. "There are differences." "There are more than differences," Nora said. "Reed does not form his W like that. He does not loop his H, and he does not write his numbers with open tops. Whoever wrote that note copied him from a distance, not from habit." Deputy Hart leaned closer. "She is right." Sheriff Bell looked at Reed. "I will wire Denver and Colorado Springs, also the land agent who sold you the Pike place. Until I hear back, stay close." "I plan to," Reed said. Nora gathered the letters, but Sheriff Bell stopped her. "I need to keep one for comparison." Her fingers tightened. Reed saw the hesitation. "Use one from my trunk instead." "No," Nora said. She selected the shortest letter, one that spoke mostly of weather and the fear of planting hope too early. Even that felt like a piece of her life leaving her hands. Sheriff Bell took it gently. "I will keep it private." Nora hoped he meant it. Outside, the crowd scattered as they stepped from the office, but not fast enough to hide their interest. Ada Pritchard stood near the mercantile, whispering with 2 women. Mr. Bell from the feed store looked away when Reed's gaze passed over him. Then Wade appeared across the street. He leaned against a porch post outside the hotel, speaking to a woman in a green traveling dress. She was young, pretty, and pale with worry. A little boy stood beside her, clutching a wooden horse against his chest. Reed stopped so suddenly, Nora nearly bumped into him. "What is it?" she asked. Reed's face had gone white. "That is Mara." "Who is Mara?" "My brother's wife." Nora looked again. The woman across the street did not look like a partner in Wade's cruelty. She looked trapped inside it. Her gloved hand rested on the boy's shoulder, and though Wade smiled down at her, Mara's eyes were fixed on the dirt, empty and afraid. Reed's voice dropped. "And that is their son, Tommy." "You never told me." "I only met the boy once. Wade kept them away after the company fell apart." Across the street, Wade bent close to Mara's ear and said something. The woman flinched. Nora saw it. So did Reed. He took one step forward before Nora caught his arm. "Not here," she whispered. "He is hurting her. And if you charge across this street, Wade will make certain everyone sees you as the violent one." Reed stopped breathing hard. Mara looked up then. Her eyes found Reed across the road. For one brief second, hope flashed across her face. Not joy, not even relief. Hope like a match struck in wind. Then Wade turned, following her gaze. His expression changed just enough for Nora to see the warning in it. He placed a hand on Mara's back and guided her into the hotel. The little boy looked over his shoulder at Reed. Then the door closed. Reed's arm was hard beneath Nora's fingers. She knows something. Yes, Nora said, and she is afraid. I have to talk to her. You will, but not while Wade is watching. They crossed to the Mercantile because Nora needed sugar and because walking away gave them a reason not to stand in the street with every eye on them. Inside, the air smelled of coffee beans, flour sacks, and lamp oil. Ada Pritchard stopped talking the moment they entered. Nora took a basket and moved down the aisle with Reed beside her. Ada's gaze followed them. At last she said, "Mrs. Whitcomb, I hope you know what you are doing." Nora turned, "So do I. That man's brother says there is a great deal you do not know. There is a great deal Wade Harlan does not know either." Ada's mouth pinched. "People are worried for you." Are they worried or are they entertained? The question landed hard. Ada flushed. Reed murmured, "Nora." But Nora was tired of bowing her head so the town could feel kind, while sharpening knives behind her back. "No," she said, looking at Ada. "If people are worried, they may come speak to me like neighbors. If they only want a scandal, they may at least have the honesty to admit it." The Mercantile went silent. Ada looked away first. Nora bought sugar, coffee, and lamp wicks with hands that shook only after she reached the wagon outside. Reed loaded the sack in the back. "You did not have to defend me in there." "I was not only defending you." "I know." Their eyes met. For a moment the street, the gossip, Wade, all of it faded behind something smaller and more dangerous. Reed reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair back from Nora's cheek. His fingers barely touched her skin, but the tenderness of it stole her breath. Then he dropped his hand, as if remembering where they stood. "Nora," he said quietly, "if this becomes too much, tell me. And if I do not, then I will try to be worthy of the trouble." She smiled despite herself. "That is a foolish promise." "It is the only one I have." Before she could answer, a small shape darted from the alley beside the hotel. The little boy. Tommy. He ran across the street so fast a wagon driver cursed and pulled his team short. Reed stepped forward, catching the boy before he stumbled into the mud near the hitching rail. Tommy looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "Uncle Reed." Reed went still. Nora's heart twisted. "Yes," Reed said softly, "I am Reed." The boy shoved something into his hand. "Mama said hide this. Papa can't know." Then he pulled away and ran back toward the hotel before either of them could stop him. Reed opened his fist. A brass key lay in his palm, tied with a strip of green thread. Nora looked from the key to the hotel windows, where a curtain had shifted on the second floor. Mara stood behind the glass, one hand pressed to her mouth. Reed closed his fingers around the key. "What does it open?" Nora whispered. His eyes lifted to the hotel window. "I think," he said, "it opens the trunk Wade brought with him." Reed closed his fist around the brass key, as if it might burn through his palm. For a moment the whole street seemed to lean toward him. Wagon wheels creaked. A shop bell rang behind them. Somewhere near the hotel porch, a man laughed too loudly, the way men laughed when they wanted others to believe they were not listening. Nora looked up at the second-floor window again. Mara was gone. Only the curtain moved, trembling slightly behind the glass. Reed slipped the key into his coat pocket. "We need to get her out of that hotel." "Not by rushing in," Nora said. His eyes flashed. "She sent her child into the street with a key, Nora. She is scared enough to risk him." "I know. That is why we cannot make a mistake." The muscle in his jaw worked. His gaze stayed fixed on the hotel door, like he was measuring the distance and every man standing between him and Wade. Nora stepped in front of him, just enough to make him look at her. "You told me Wade turns every action into a weapon. If you storm in there, he will say you threatened his wife. He will say you frightened the boy. He will have witnesses before supper." Reed drew a hard breath through his nose. "You are right," he said, though the words cost him. "I wish I were not." Reed looked down at the key hidden in his pocket. "Mara knows where the proof is." "Then she needs a way to speak without Wade seeing." Nora's mind began to move through Cedar Hollow as she knew it. The hotel had a rear stair by the laundry yard. The alley beside it opened toward the livery. Mrs. Bell from the feed store delivered eggs there every other morning. The hotel kitchen took pies on Fridays from the church ladies. And today was Friday. Nora turned toward the church road. "What?" Reed asked. "I know a way inside that will not look like a rescue." "Nora!" She heard the warning in his voice and almost smiled. "Do not use that tone. I was getting pies through back doors long before your brother brought his polished boots to my town." Half an hour later, Nora stood in her kitchen wrapping 3 small apple hand pies in brown paper. Reed paced near the back door. "You do not have to do this," he said for the 3rd time. Nora tied the paper with twine. "You have said that already." "I mean it every time. And I have ignored it every time." His pacing stopped, "because if Wade catches you meddling, he will turn on you. He already has. This will be worse." Nora looked at him then. He stood in her kitchen with his hat in one hand and fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. The sight reached past her courage and touched the lonely place beneath it. "I'm afraid too," she admitted. His expression softened at once. "But fear is not a command." She lifted the wrapped pies. "It is only a warning. Today I hear it, then I keep walking." Reed came closer, stopping with enough distance between them to be careful. "How did a woman like you spend 2 years thinking she was only half alive?" The question was too tender. Nora looked down at the twine. "Because the people who loved me kept speaking gently, and gentle can become a cage when nobody expects you to step out of it." "I expect it," Reed said quietly. She looked up. "I expect you to step wherever you decide to step," he continued. "I only wish the road was safer." A soft ache moved through her. "So do I." Neither of them moved for a long breath. Then a wagon rattled past outside, and the moment folded itself away. Nora carried the pies into town alone because that was the only way it would work. Reed hated it, but he stayed behind near the livery, close enough to come if she needed him, far enough not to draw Wade's eye. At the hotel kitchen door, Mrs. Lottie Grimes looked surprised to see her. "Nora Whitcomb, thought the church ladies were bringing pies today." "They are," Nora said smoothly. "Mrs. Pritchard's crust was short, so I brought these ahead." Lottie glanced at the parcels and shrugged. "Put them by the pantry. Place is upside down since that Harlan gentleman arrived. Wants hot coffee every hour and complains about the sheets like he owns the railroad." Nora smiled faintly. "Some men mistake noise for importance." Lottie snorted. "Ain't that the truth?" Nora moved through the kitchen slowly, listening. Above her, floorboards creaked. A child's voice spoke once, then hushed. She placed 2 pies on the pantry shelf and kept one in her basket. "Is Mrs. Harlan upstairs?" Nora asked lightly. "I saw the little boy earlier and thought he looked pale." Lottie lowered her voice. "Poor thing. Mother and child both look like they have been held under water. Room 6, but I did not tell you." "No," Nora said, "you did not." She took the back stairs with her heart beating so hard she feared it might knock against the walls. Each step groaned beneath her boots. At the landing, she paused. Voices came from down the hall. Wade's voice. "Smile when we go down," he said, low and sharp. "I will not have you looking whipped in front of these people." Mara's reply was too soft to hear. "You know what happens if you shame me." Nora's hand tightened on the basket handle. A door opened. Nora stepped quickly into the shadowed corner near the linen shelf. Wade strode past the hall, straightening his cuffs, his face already wearing that easy public smile. He did not look toward her. His boots thundered down the stairs. When the sound faded, Nora moved to room 6 and knocked once. Silence. Then barely there, "Who is it?" "Nora Whitcomb, your son gave Reed something." The door opened a crack. Mara Harlan stood behind it, pale as candle wax. A bruise, yellowing at the edge, marked the side of her wrist where her sleeve had slipped back. Her eyes went to the hall, then to Nora. "Come in quickly." The room smelled of dust, lavender soap, and fear. Tommy sat on the bed holding his wooden horse, watching Nora with solemn eyes. Mara shut the door. "Did Reed get the key?" "Yes." "Then tell him the trunk is in the freight room behind the livery." Wade did not trust the hotel. "The key opens the brass lock." "What is inside?" Mara pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting tears. "Ledgers, real ledgers, letters from buyers, bank drafts. Proof Wade took the money and put Reed's name on it. I kept them because I thought someday I might need to protect Tommy." Nora's breath caught. "Why give them to Reed now?" Mara looked toward her son. "Because Wade plans to leave me here." The words were quiet, but they seemed to darken the room. "He brought us to make himself look respectable. A wife, a child, a family man warning a town against his wicked brother." Her voice broke. "But I heard him last night. He has a buyer meeting in Savannah. Once Reed is ruined, Wade means to take the money and disappear. He said a wife who knows too much is a burden." Tommy climbed off the bed and pressed himself against his mother's skirt. Nora felt anger rise hot in her chest. "Come with me," she said. Myra shook her head hard. "No, not yet. If I leave before Reed has the trunk, Wade will know. He will run." "Then after?" Mara searched her face. "Why would you help me?" Because Nora had seen that look in mirrors after Peter died. Because fear made women strangers until one of them opened a door. Because Reed's pain and Mara's fear were tied to the same cruel hand. "Because someone should have helped you sooner," Nora said. Mara's eyes filled. A sound came from below, Wade's voice closer now. Mara seized Nora's hand. "Go backstairs. Tell Reed to hurry. Wade is meeting Sela's Creed at 4 by the freight room." Nora slipped out with her basket, moving fast but not running. The hall seemed longer than before. She reached the stairs just as Wade's boots started up from below. There was no time. Nora pushed open the nearest door and stepped inside. It was not a linen closet. It was Wade's room. A black coat hung over the chair. A cigar still smoked in the tray. On the table lay a fresh handbill, this one bearing not Reed's name but Nora's. "Warning, Widow Whitcomb may be aiding a wanted fraud." Her blood went cold. Then the door handle turned behind her. Nora had one breath to decide whether to hide, speak, or pray. The door opened. Wade Harlan stepped into the room, still wearing his public smile, still smoothing one cuff as if he had not just turned the whole town into a stage for his lies. He stopped when he saw her. For one silent second, both of them stared. Then Wade closed the door behind him. Not slammed. Not startled. Closed it softly, like a man who had just found an advantage. "Well, Mrs. Whitcomb," he said, "this is a private room." Nora's fingers tightened around the basket handle. Her eyes flicked once to the table, to the handbill with her name printed in black, then back to Wade. "I took the wrong door." "Did you?" His gaze moved to the basket, then to her face. The false kindness slipped from him now that no one else was watching. Without witnesses, Wade did not bother pretending to be charming. Nora moved one step toward the door. Wade moved with her, blocking it. "Let me pass." In a moment, his voice remained smooth. "First, I would like to know why Reed Harlan's little widow friend is wandering through hotel rooms." The word little struck exactly where he aimed it, but Nora refused to flinch. "I came to deliver pies." "To my room." "To the kitchen, then I got turned around." Wade smiled. "You do not look like a woman who gets turned around easily." Nora said nothing. A muffled sound came from the hall, someone walking past, too far to help, too close for Wade to raise his voice. His eyes dropped again to the handbill on the table. "You saw that?" "Yes." "Then you know this can become unpleasant." "It already has." "No." Wade took a slow step closer. "This is still polite. Unpleasant is when every man in Cedar Hollow believes you helped a wanted cheat escape justice. Unpleasant is when the bank wonders if Widow Whitcomb's accounts are as clean as she claims. Unpleasant is when people start asking why your husband left everything to you and whether he meant to." Nora felt the blood leave her face. Wade saw it. There it was, the same method Reed had warned her about. Find the soft place. Press until the person bent. "You know nothing about my husband." "I know dead men do not defend their wills." Her breath came shallow, but her voice stayed steady. "And cowardly men attack widows because living men see through them." His smile disappeared. For the first time, Nora saw the man beneath the polish. Not a quick-talking brother, not a clever businessman, a bitter, hollow thing that fed on fear because it had no real strength of its own. "You think Reed will protect you?" Wade asked. "I think Reed tells fewer lies before breakfast." Wade stepped closer. "You are making a mistake." "No," Nora said. "I made my mistake years ago when I believed quiet would keep cruel people out of my life. It does not. It only lets them speak louder." Something struck the wall outside the room. A knock. Then Lottie Grimes's voice came through the door. "Mr. Harlan, you want that coffee now, or shall I dump it in the wash water?" Wade's eyes stayed on Nora. Nora lifted her chin. "Sounds like you have a witness." He opened the door with a pleasant expression, restored so quickly it made her skin crawl. "Mrs. Grimes," he said warmly, "Mrs. Whitcomb lost her way." Lottie stood in the hall with a tray and one eyebrow raised. Her gaze flicked from Wade to Nora, then to the handbill on the table. "So I see," Lottie said. "Happens in hotels, doors everywhere." Nora slipped past Wade before he could stop her. In the hall, she did not run. She forced herself to walk with dignity down the back stairs, though every nerve in her body screamed. Only when she reached the alley did she breathe. Reed was waiting near the livery, half hidden by the side wall, his hat low and his eyes fixed on the hotel. When he saw her face, he was across the alley in an instant. "What happened?" "Not here." She took his arm and pulled him toward the shadow behind the blacksmith shop. The smell of coal smoke and hot iron hung in the air, thick enough to hide their lowered voices. "Mara said the trunk is in the freight room behind the livery," Nora said quickly. "The key opens the brass lock. Inside are the real ledgers, buyer letters, bank drafts, everything." Reed's eyes sharpened. "You spoke to her?" "Yes. Wade plans to leave her and Tommy here after he ruins you. He meets Sela's at 4 by the freight room." Reed looked toward the sun. "That gives us less than an hour." "There is more." Nora swallowed. "Wade has printed handbills with my name on them." Reed went very still. "What?" "Warning people that I am helping a wanted fraud." His face changed in a way that hurt to see. Guilt came first, then rage, then something worse. Fear that he had brought this to her door. "Nora, I am sorry." "No. I dragged you into this." "No," she said again, sharper. "Wade dragged lies into this town. I chose where to stand. This is not a porch conversation anymore. He is going after Peter's memory, your accounts, your life here." "I know. You should walk away while you still can." The words landed between them like a closed gate. For one moment, Nora was too stunned to answer. Then she took one step back. "Is that what you want?" Reed's jaw worked. "What I want stopped being the safest thing the moment you dropped that pie." "That is not an answer." He looked away. Nora felt the ache of it deep in her chest. "Say it plainly, Reed. Do you want me gone?" His eyes came back to hers at once, dark and wounded. "No." The word was raw. "No," he repeated lower. "I want you far from danger and close enough that I can still hear you laugh. I want your porch and your letters and your stubborn way of saving broken things. I want what I have no right to ask for while my brother is trying to burn down every life near mine." Nora's anger softened, but she did not let it vanish. "Then stop asking me to leave just so you can feel noble." Reed closed his eyes briefly. "I am not good at this." "At what?" "Being cared for without trying to pay for it with distance." That quiet confession moved through her more strongly than any romantic speech could have. Before she could answer, the town clock struck 3. They both turned toward the square. Reed touched the pocket where the key rested. "We need that trunk. And we need witnesses. Sheriff Bell. If we tell him before we see what is inside, Wade may move it." "Then who?" Nora thought of Lottie Grimes raising one eyebrow in the hotel hall, of Deputy Hart nearly smiling at Wade's discomfort, of Samuel Briggs delivering telegrams faster than gossip could travel. "People who know how to see without being seen," she said. By 3:30, Nora had gathered more help than Reed expected and less than she wished. Lottie agreed to keep watch from the hotel kitchen. Samuel Briggs promised to run for Sheriff Bell if Nora waved her handkerchief from the alley. Deputy Hart, found behind the jail cleaning his rifle, listened quietly as Nora explained. "I cannot search a freight room without the sheriff," he said. "I am not asking you to search," Nora replied. "I am asking you to be nearby when Wade opens what he claims is his." Deputy Hart studied Reed. "If this turns crooked, I answer to Sheriff Bell." "If this turns crooked," Reed said, "I will answer first." The deputy nodded once. 4 o'clock then. At 10 minutes to 4, the freight room behind the livery sat quiet under the afternoon sun. It was a low wooden building with one small window and double doors that opened toward the alley. Crates stood stacked beneath the overhang. A few barrels of flour waited for pickup. Dust floated in the golden light. Reed and Nora watched from inside the livery, standing behind a half-open stall door. The horses shifted around them, sensing tension in the humans. Nora's heart beat so loudly she thought Reed could hear it. He looked down at her. "You should be across the street. If you say one more version of that, I will step on your boot." Despite everything, his mouth twitched. "Yes, ma'am." Footsteps sounded outside. Wade entered the alley first, carrying his coat over one arm. Silas Creed followed, broad and rough-faced, with a scar near his mouth and a cigar clenched between his teeth. "You sure the boy passed it?" Silas asked. Wade's face darkened. "Mara swears the key is missing. Either the child took it or she hid it." "Then we move the trunk now." "We move nothing until I have what I need. Reed will be in a cell by nightfall if Bell is half the fool he looks." Reed's hand tightened around the stall door. Nora touched his wrist. Wade stopped before the freight room. "Break the lock." Silas crouched with a tool, and began working the brass lock. Nora's breath caught. If Wade opened the trunk first and took the papers, they could lose the only proof they had. Reed reached into his pocket, feeling the key. Then he looked at Nora. She knew what he was asking without words. "Trust me." Her answer was just as silent. "Yes." Reed stepped out of the livery. "Looking for this, Wade." Wade turned slowly. For one naked moment, fury twisted his face. Then the smile returned. "Little brother, always appearing where you do not belong." Reed held up the key. "This came to me. From my son, I expect. A child stealing from his father is a sad thing. A child trying to protect his mother is not." Silas stood, hand hovering near his belt. Deputy Hart stepped from behind the flour barrels with his rifle resting easy but visible. "Afternoon," the deputy said. Silas froze. Wade's eyes narrowed. "This is private property." "Actually," Lottie called from the hotel kitchen yard, "freight room belongs to Mr. Fallen till cargo is claimed. Everyone in town knows that." Nora stepped out beside Reed. Wade's stare cut to her. "You?" "Yes," Nora said. "Me." Reed moved to the lock and fitted the key. For a second, no one breathed. The lock opened with a clean click. Inside the freight room, the trunk waited beneath a canvas tarp, dark leather, brass corners, Wade's initials stamped on the side. Reed lifted the lid. The first thing inside was a stack of ledgers bound in red twine. Nora picked one up and opened it. Her eyes moved over the page, then stopped. There were names, payments, dates, and 2 columns marked RH debt and WH retained. Numbers crossed out, signatures copied, bank drafts tucked between pages. Reed exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath for years. Deputy Hart stepped closer. "I think Sheriff Bell needs to see that." Wade laughed once. "Those books are mine." "Yes," Nora said, lifting the ledger for all to see. "That is the first true thing you have said." Wade's face went red. Then Mara appeared at the far end of the alley, holding Tommy's hand. She looked pale but steady. "They are his," she said, voice shaking but clear, "and they prove what he did." Wade turned on her. "Go back inside." Mara did not move. "No." It was a small word. A quiet word. But it struck harder than any shout. Wade stepped toward her, and Reed moved at once, placing himself between Wade and Mara. Silas shifted, but Deputy Hart raised his rifle slightly. "Do not," the deputy said. The alley filled with people now. Samuel had fetched Sheriff Bell. Ada Pritchard stood near the mercantile corner. Mr. Bell from the feed store. 2 church ladies. Half the town arriving just in time to see the mask come off. Sheriff Bell took the ledger from Nora and read the first page. Then the second. His face grew darker with each line. "Wade Harlan," he said slowly, "I believe you and I need to have a very long conversation." Wade looked at the gathered crowd, then at the trunk, then at Reed. The polished man vanished. In his place stood a cornered one. "You think this saves him," Wade said, voice rising. "You think papers make him clean. Reed signed what I told him to sign. He was too drunk on grief to know a bill from a Bible. He let it happen." Reed flinched. Nora saw it and her heart clenched. Wade smiled cruelly. "That is the truth, brother. You were weak. Elise died and you became useless. I only did what a stronger man would do." The alley went silent. Reed's face drained of color. For a terrible second, Nora thought Wade had found the one wound deep enough to make Reed fold. Then she took Reed's hand in front of everyone. "If you believe one act of courage can change a life, don't forget to like this story and stay with Nora and Reed, because the truth is finally stepping into daylight." Reed looked down at their joined hands. Something returned to him. He lifted his head. "You are right about one thing, Wade," Reed said. "I was weak. I was grieving. I trusted you when I should have fought you. But weakness is not theft. Grief is not guilt. And today I am done letting your sin wear my name." Wade's expression cracked. Sheriff Bell nodded to Deputy Hart. "Take Mr. Wade Harlan to my office." As the deputy moved toward him, Wade backed away. "You will regret this," he snarled, eyes fixed on Nora. "Both of you." Then he turned suddenly and bolted through the narrow gap beside the freight room. Silas lunged after him. Men shouted, horses startled, the alley erupted into motion. Reed started forward, but Nora held tight to his hand. "Let the sheriff take him," she said. Reed looked torn. Then from the street came a woman's scream. "Mara!" Nora and Reed ran toward the sound. They reached the corner just in time to see Wade swing onto a saddled horse near the hotel, one arm locked around Tommy, pulling the terrified child up in front of him. Mara stumbled after them, crying out. Reed went still with horror. Wade dug in his heels, turning the horse toward the open road. "Wade!" Reed shouted. His brother looked back once, wild-eyed and desperate. Then he rode hard out of Cedar Hollow with the boy clutched against him, dust rising behind them like smoke. For one terrible second, nobody moved. The dust from Wade's horse rose in the street like a curtain, swallowing the road north of Cedar Hollow. Mara stood in the middle of the square with both hands pressed to her mouth, her cry fading into a broken sound no mother should ever make. The little wooden horse Tommy had carried fell from her fingers and landed in the dirt. Then Reed ran. He crossed the street before Sheriff Bell could shout, before Deputy Hart could reach his own horse, before Nora had time to think. Reed grabbed the reins of a chestnut tied outside the livery and swung into the saddle with the ease of a man who had spent his life between fear and open land. "Reed!" Nora called. He looked back once. In that one glance she saw everything: terror for the boy, rage at Wade, and beneath it the old wound Wade had opened in the alley. "You were weak." Nora knew if Reed chased his brother with that voice in his head, the ride would not end well. She ran to him and seized the saddle horn before he could turn the horse. "Do not chase him angry." "Nora, he has Tommy." "I know." Her voice shook, but she held his gaze. "Then chase him smart." Sheriff Bell arrived, breath hard, hat crooked. "He'll take the north road. It cuts toward Miller's Creek." "Not with a child," Reed said. "That road is washed near the bend. Wade knows it." "Then where?" Reed looked past the church steeple toward the low hills beyond town. "Old Quarry Trail. It runs behind the ridge and comes out near the rail stop at Benton's Crossing. If he reaches the train, he disappears." Mara stumbled toward them. "Please," she begged, "please bring my boy back." Reed's face broke. For a heartbeat, he was not the careful man from the letters or the wounded cowboy trying to rebuild his name. He was a man looking at a mother's grief and remembering another woman he had failed to save. Nora touched his boot. "Look at me." He did. "You did not lose Elise because you were weak. You will not lose Tommy because you are angry. Breathe, Reed, then ride." Something steadied in him. He nodded once. Sheriff Bell pointed at Deputy Hart. "You and 3 men take the north road in case he doubles back. I'll ride Quarry Trail with Harlan." "I am coming," Nora said. Reed's eyes widened. "No." "Yes." "Nora, this is not a fight for a porch or a ledger." "No, it is a child on a horse with a desperate man, and I know the Quarry Trail." "So do I." "You know the cattle path. I know the creek crossing after the last storm. Peter and I used that road for years." She turned to Sheriff Bell before Reed could argue. If Wade tries the old bridge, he cannot cross fast. The boards are loose on the east side. We can cut him off through the Whitcomb grazing lane. Sheriff Bell looked between them, then swore under his breath. Fine, but you ride behind us and do what I say. Reed looked like he wanted to refuse the whole world. Nora met his eyes. You asked me not to be glass. That ended it. Within minutes, 3 horses tore out of Cedar Hollow toward the hills. Reed rode first, low in the saddle, jaw set. Sheriff Bell followed hard on his left. Nora rode behind them on Buttercup, her old mare slower than Reed's chestnut but steady on rough ground. The town fell away behind them. Fields opened wide under the late afternoon sun. Dry grass bent in the wind. Fence lines flickered past. Ahead, the ridge rose brown and jagged, its old quarry road cutting through stone and scrub oak. Nora's heart hammered with every hoofbeat. She had not ridden this fast since before Peter died. Back then, speed had meant laughter, summer air, Peter calling back that she could not catch him. Now speed meant a child's life and a man she loved riding toward the brother who had nearly destroyed him. Loved. The word struck hard. She had not said it aloud, not to Reed, not even to herself, but there it was, riding with her through dust and wind. She loved him. Not because of the letters alone, not because he understood grief, not because he was broken in a way that matched her broken places. She loved him because he still chose gentleness after being taught shame, because he saved broken pie dishes, because he had stood in the sheriff's office and let truth hurt rather than let lies grow, because he was afraid and kept moving anyway. Ahead, Reed lifted one hand. They slowed near a fork in the trail. Fresh hoofmarks cut through the dirt toward the quarry. Sheriff Bell leaned down to study them, fast. Reed's eyes narrowed. Horses carrying 2, he cannot keep this pace. A distant sound rose from the ridge. A child crying. Mara's son. Reed's horse jerked beneath him, as if feeling the rider's shock. Tommy, Reed shouted. No answer came but wind. They rode again. The quarry trail narrowed, twisting between low stone walls and thorn brush. Buttercup stumbled once and Nora gripped the reins tight. Loose pebbles scattered beneath the hooves. The sun had dropped lower now, turning the rocks gold and red. Then they saw them. Wade's horse stood near the old bridge, sides heaving. Wade sat in the saddle with Tommy in front of him, one arm around the boy's chest. The bridge beyond them crossed a shallow ravine where Miller's Creek ran over stones. On the far side, the trail led toward Benton's Crossing and the rail stop. But the bridge had lost 2 boards near the middle. Wade saw them and pulled his horse sideways. Stay back, he shouted. Reed stopped first, raising one hand. Sheriff Bell drew his horse in beside him. Nora halted a few yards behind, breath burning in her chest. Tommy's face was pale and wet with tears. Uncle Reed, the boy cried. Wade tightened his arm, quiet. Reed's voice came low and careful. Let him go, Wade. Move your horses. You cannot cross that bridge at a run. I said move. Sheriff Bell kept his hand near his belt but did not draw. Wade Harlan, give me the boy and step down. Wade laughed wildly. So you can drag me back to your little jail and let them all look at me like I am the villain. You took a child, Nora said. Wade's eyes snapped to her. He is my son. Then stop using him as a shield. The word struck him, his face twisted. Reed shifted slightly in the saddle. Look at me, Wade, this is between us. It has always been between us, Wade spat. You and that cursed grief of yours. You think you were the only one who lost everything. When Elise died, you stopped caring. You left the company to rot. I held it together. You stole from it. I saved what I could. You saved yourself. Wade's horse danced close to the bridge. Tommy whimpered. Nora felt cold fear move through her. One bad step, one slip, one foolish burst of pride and the child could fall. Reed saw it too. His voice changed, softening in a way that surprised her. Wade, listen. You are angry with me, I understand that. No, you do not. Maybe not, but I know what it is to feel like life took something and left you standing with empty hands. Wade's face flickered. Reed leaned forward slightly. You think I left you to carry the company alone. Maybe I did. Maybe grief made me blind to what you needed. If that is true, I am sorry. Nora's breath caught. Even Sheriff Bell looked at Reed sharply. Wade stared at him. You think an apology fixes this? No, Reed said, but Tommy has no part in what happened between us. Let him down, then hate me all you want. For one fragile second, Wade's hold loosened. Tommy twisted, reaching toward Reed. Papa, please, the boy sobbed. I want Mama. Wade looked down at his son. Something human crossed his face. Then a shout came from behind them. Deputy Hart and the others had reached the far bend, blocking the road back toward town. Wade panicked. He kicked his horse toward the bridge. No, Nora cried. The horse surged forward, hooves striking the old boards. The first planks held. The second groaned. Reed launched his horse after them, but he was too far. Halfway across, the loose board snapped. Wade's horse screamed and stumbled. Tommy slipped from the saddle. Reed was already moving. He threw himself from his horse onto the bridge, landing hard on one knee. Tommy slid toward the broken gap, small hands clawing at wood. Nora screamed his name, though she did not know whether she was calling to Reed or the child. Reed caught Tommy by the wrist. The boy hung over the ravine, feet kicking above the creek stones below. Wade had fallen against the bridge rail, one leg pinned under the saddle as his horse thrashed. Sheriff Bell and Deputy Hart rushed forward, shouting, trying to calm the animal. Reed lay flat on the bridge, one arm hooked around a beam, the other gripping Tommy. Hold on, he gritted. Tommy cried, I'm slipping. Nora jumped down from Buttercup and ran onto the bridge before anyone could stop her. The boards shook under her feet. Reed's face was white with strain. Nora, stay back. She ignored him and dropped to her knees beside him. Give me your belt, she shouted to Sheriff Bell. The sheriff tore it free and threw it. Nora looped it around Reed's arm and the bridge post, bracing her feet against a cracked plank. Pull him up, she told Reed. I cannot get leverage. Yes, you can, her voice shook. You are not weak. Reed's eyes met hers. Everything around them seemed to pause. The screaming horse, the shouting men, Wade groaning against the rail, Tommy crying below. You are not weak. Reed gave one hard breath and pulled. Nora pulled with him, the belt cutting into her hands. Tommy rose inch by inch, sobbing, reaching. Reed caught the boy's coat with his other hand and dragged him over the edge, rolling him onto the bridge. Tommy crawled straight into Nora's arms. She held him so tight he gasped. Reed rolled onto his back, breathing hard, one knee bleeding through his trouser leg. For a moment he only stared at the sky. Then Tommy pulled free from Nora and threw himself onto Reed's chest. Uncle Reed, he sobbed. Reed's face crumpled. He wrapped both arms around the boy and held him with a tenderness that made Nora's eyes burn. Across the bridge, Sheriff Bell freed Wade's pinned leg and dragged him clear. The horse stumbled to its feet and bolted into the brush, reins trailing. Wade tried to rise, but Deputy Hart pressed him down. Wade Harlan, Sheriff Bell said, breathing hard, you are under arrest. Wade laughed weakly, dirt on his face, fear in his eyes. Reed saved him. Yes, the sheriff said, he did. Wade looked at Reed then, and for the first time there was no charm, no threat, no polished mask. Only defeat. Reed did not look back at him. His eyes were on Tommy, then Nora. Nora's hands were bleeding where the belt had cut her palms. Reed saw them and reached toward her, but stopped, as if the whole world were still watching. Nora did not care. She went to him. Right there on the broken bridge, with the sheriff binding Wade's hands and the boy crying between them, Nora pressed her forehead gently against Reed's. "You saved him," she whispered. Reed's voice broke. "We did. If you believe love can help a wounded heart find courage again, stay with this story. Because Nora and Reed have survived the chase, but the hardest truth is still waiting back in Cedar Hollow." They returned to town near dusk. Mara ran to Tommy before the horses had fully stopped. She fell to her knees in the street and gathered him into her arms, rocking him, kissing his hair, whispering his name again and again. The people of Cedar Hollow watched in stunned silence as Sheriff Bell brought Wade in tied at the wrists. No one whispered now. No one laughed. No one called Reed a thief. They had seen him ride after a child. They had seen the blood on his knee and the exhaustion in his face. They had seen Tommy cling to him like a man worth trusting. Mara rose slowly, still holding her son's hand. She turned to the gathered town. "My husband lied," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Reed Harlan did not steal from anyone. Wade did, and if you need proof, I will give it, all of it." The square remained silent. Then Lottie Grimes stepped forward. "I believe her." Deputy Hart nodded. "So do I." One by one faces changed. Not all, not fully, but enough. Reed stood beside Nora, limping slightly, dust on his coat and pain in every line of his body. The town was finally seeing him. But Nora saw something else. His hands trembled. Not from fear of Wade now. From the weight of being believed too late. That night after Wade was locked in the jail and Mara and Tommy were safe at Nora's house, Reed stood alone outside by the pasture fence. The moon had risen pale above the fields. His hat hung from one hand. His shoulders were bowed. Nora walked to him quietly. "You should let me clean that knee." "In a minute." "You said that an hour ago." He gave a tired half-smile, but it faded. "I keep thinking," he said, "if I had faced Wade sooner, maybe Mara would not have suffered. Maybe Tommy would not have been dragged onto that bridge. Maybe all of this could have ended years ago." Nora stood beside him. "Maybe, or maybe you faced him when you finally had enough truth and enough help to win. He looked at her, and you were that help." She swallowed. "So were you." Reed turned fully toward her. In the moonlight, the sharpness had left his face. What remained was the man from the letters and the man from the bridge, both real now, both standing before her. "I need to tell you something," he said. Nora's heart began to pound. But before he could continue, the back door opened. Mara stood on the porch, holding something in her hand. "Nora," she called softly, "Reed, there is another paper in Wade's coat." Reed's expression tightened. "What paper?" Mara stepped into the moonlight. "A marriage license," she said. Nora went still. Mara looked at Reed with frightened eyes. "It has your name on it, Reed, and Nora's." For a moment, the night became so still that Nora could hear the paper trembling in Mara's hand. A marriage license. With Reed's name. And hers. The words did not make sense at first. They stood out by the pasture fence beneath the pale moon, with the smell of dust and horse sweat still clinging to Reed's coat, with the whole house behind them full of frightened people trying to breathe after a day of terror. Wade was locked in the jail. Tommy was safe. The truth had begun to rise. Then this new lie appeared like a snake under a floorboard. Reed moved first. He crossed the yard, limping from the wound in his knee, and took the paper from Mara with a careful hand. Nora followed more slowly, her heart climbing into her throat. Mara held her shawl tight around her shoulders. I found it folded inside the lining of Wade's coat. I was looking for anything that might help Sheriff Bell. Reed unfolded the paper beneath the porch lamp. Nora saw the seal first, County Clerk's Office, Benton County, then the names written in black ink. Reed Matthew Harlan. Nora Whitcomb. Application for marriage license. Her stomach turned cold. "That is not real," she whispered. Reed's jaw hardened. "No." Myra's eyes filled with worry. "There is more." She handed him a second sheet. This one was a statement, written in Wade's smooth hand but signed with another name. "I, Mrs. Ada Pritchard, do testify that Mrs. Nora Whitcomb and Reed Harlan have represented themselves as secretly engaged, with intent to join their properties for financial advantage while avoiding public shame." Nora felt as if the porch had tilted beneath her. "Ada did not write that," she said. "She gossips, but she would not sign a lie like this." Reed examined the signature. "It is copied." "Copied from what?" Mara's face tightened with guilt. "Wade collected signatures today. He said he wanted townspeople to support his complaint against Reed. Some signed blank witness forms because he said Sheriff Bell would fill in details later." Nora closed her eyes. Of course. Wade had not been finished. Even while his trunk sat full of proof, even while his lies began cracking open, he had been building another trap. Reed looked at the marriage license again. "He meant to claim I came here to marry you for your farm." "And that I knew," Nora said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "That I planned it with you." Mara wiped at her cheek. "I am so sorry. I should have looked sooner. I should have told someone sooner." Nora opened her eyes and reached for Mara's hand. "No, you protected your son. You survived him. That is not a small thing." Mara's face crumpled, but she nodded. Inside the house, Tommy cried out in his sleep. Mara turned at once and hurried back in. Nora and Reed remained on the porch with the papers between them. The lamp flame shook in the breeze. Reed's voice was low. "This is my fault." Nora almost laughed from exhaustion. "You say that like it is a prayer." "I brought Wade here." "Wade brought Wade here. He came because of me. He stayed because men like him cannot bear losing control." Reed looked at the forged license, then at Nora. "If this paper reaches the wrong hands before Sheriff Bell proves it false, your name will be dragged worse than mine. My name has survived worse than ink." "Nora." "No." She took the papers from him and held them up. "Listen to me. I spent 2 years letting people decide what kind of woman I was allowed to be. Then you arrived, and half the town decided again before I had spoken a word. I am done standing still while other people write my life for me." Reed stared at her with something like awe and pain mixed together. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Nora looked toward the town road. "We take this to Sheriff Bell now. It is late. Wade did not wait for morning to ruin us. We do not wait for morning to stop him." They left Mara and Tommy sleeping in Nora's house with Margaret, who had arrived just after dusk with food, blankets, and a face full of fierce questions. When Nora explained the forged license, Margaret's anger came so sharp she reached for her coat before anyone asked. "I am coming," Margaret said. "You do not have to." "I know, that is why I am." So the three of them walked into Cedar Hollow under moonlight, Reed between the two sisters, limping but upright. The town looked different at night. The mercantile windows were dark. The saloon still glowed at the far corner. The jail lamp burned yellow beside the sheriff's office. Sheriff Bell was at his desk when they entered. He looked older than he had that morning. Papers from Wade's trunk lay spread before him, and Deputy Hart stood by the stove with coffee that had gone cold in his hand. The sheriff looked up. "Tell me that is not more trouble." Nora placed the forged marriage license on his desk. Sheriff Bell read it. His face tightened. Then she placed Ada's false statement beside it. Deputy Hart swore under his breath. Sheriff Bell removed his spectacles and rubbed his eyes. "He was planning to accuse you two of a marriage fraud." "Yes," Nora said. "And use your property as motive." "Yes." Reed stepped forward. Mara found it in his coat. Sheriff Bell's gaze moved to Reed. "He will say she planted it." "Mara has been under his thumb for years," Nora said. "And tonight she stood in the town square to tell the truth. That should count for something." "It does." The sheriff picked up the statement. "But this Ada signature makes things harder. If people sign blank papers, Wade may have more." Margaret leaned over the desk. "Then wake them." Sheriff Bell blinked. "Pardon." "Wake every person who signed. Let them look at what their careless hands nearly did." Nora glanced at her sister in surprise. Margaret's eyes flashed. "They were awake enough to gossip. They can wake up for truth." For the first time all day, Reed gave a faint smile. Sheriff Bell looked at the clock, then sighed. "Lord help me, the Whitcomb women are going to end my peace." "Your peace was already gone," Nora said. "We are only making use of it." Within an hour, lamps began lighting across Cedar Hollow. Ada Pritchard arrived first, wrapped in a shawl, face pale and pinched with fear. Mr. Bell from the feed store came next, then two church women, the hotel clerk, and a cattle buyer who had been drinking with Wade at the saloon. All of them had signed something for Wade. All of them looked smaller under the sheriff's lamp than they had in daylight. Sheriff Bell laid the false statement before Ada. "Is that your signature?" Ada stared at it. "Yes." "Did you write this statement?" Her lips trembled. "No." "Did you read the paper before signing?" Ada's face reddened. Mr. Harlan said it was only to confirm that Reed Harlan had been seen in town. He said it was for the sheriff's records. Nora stood near the wall, silent. Ada looked at her, shame slowly breaking through pride. "Nora," she whispered, "I did not know." Nora wanted to snap that not knowing was no excuse. She wanted to ask if Ada had ever cared whether gossip was true before passing it along like fresh bread. She wanted to say that a careless signature could wound as badly as a cruel hand. But then she saw Ada's fingers twisting in her shawl. Cedar Hollow had not invented Wade. It had simply made room for him because scandal was easier to enjoy than truth was to test. "You should have asked me," Nora said. Ada lowered her eyes. "Yes, I should have." One by one, the others admitted the same. They had signed too quickly, believed too easily, let Wade's charm and Reed's past and Nora's widowhood make a story they did not bother to question. Sheriff Bell wrote every word down. Then he stood. "This confirms fraud, forgery, and intent to defame. Mr. Wade Harlan will be transferred to county court in the morning." A sound came from the cells behind the office. Slow clapping. Wade stood behind the bars, face bruised from the fall, one hand wrapped around the iron. He smiled through the shadows. "How touching," he said. "A whole town gathers for confession." Reed's body went rigid. Nora felt him tense beside her, but this time he did not step forward. He stayed still. Wade's eyes moved to the forged license on the desk. "You should be thanking me, brother. I nearly gave you what you wanted." Reed's voice came cold. "Do not speak her name." "I did not have to. You write it on your face every time you look at her." Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she did not look away. Wade leaned closer to the bars. "That is what makes you weak. Both of you, always needing someone to save. Elise, Mara, Nora. You dress it up as love, Reed, but it is just another kind of hunger. Reed's face tightened, but his voice stayed steady. You would not recognize love if it stood in front of you. I recognized enough to use it. The room went silent. Mara, who had arrived with Margaret shortly after the witnesses, stepped into view. Tommy stood behind her, one hand wrapped in her skirt. Wade saw them, and for the first time his expression faltered. "Mara," he said softer, "take Tommy home." "No." Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I am not going anywhere you tell me again." Wade's eyes narrowed. "You are my wife." Mara lifted her chin. "Not for long." A ripple moved through the room. Tommy peeked from behind her skirt. Wade looked at the boy, and something like desperation flashed across his face. "Tommy," he said, "come here, son." Tommy shrank back. That broke something in Wade. His hand dropped from the bars, and for a moment he looked not powerful, not polished, not dangerous. Just empty. But emptiness could still cut. He looked at Reed. "You turned my own family against me." "No," Mara said, "you did." Wade turned away then, as if he could not bear the sight of them. Sheriff Bell ordered everyone home, promising statements would be taken properly at first light. People left in small groups, quieter than they had come. Outside, dawn had begun to pale the edge of the sky. Nora stood on the jail steps, exhausted down to her bones. Reed came beside her, moving carefully on his injured leg. For a while, they watched Cedar Hollow wake. Ada Pritchard crossed the street alone. "Nora," she said. Nora waited. Ada took a breath. "I have been unkind, worse than unkind. I thought calling it concern made it decent, but it was gossip. I am sorry." The apology was plain, no excuse, no performance. Nora nodded slowly. "Thank you." Ada turned to Reed. "And Mr. Harlan, I am sorry to you as well." Reed removed his hat. "Ma'am." When Ada walked away, Nora felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness fully. Not yet, but the beginning of a door opening. Margaret took Mara and Tommy back to the house in the wagon, leaving Nora and Reed to walk the quiet road together. The first light touched the fields, silver on fence wire, gold on dry grass. Birds had started singing as if the night had not held nearly every sorrow a heart could carry. Halfway home, Reed stopped. Nora turned. "Your knee." "No." He looked at her in the early light, face tired, eyes honest. "I need to finish what I tried to say before Mara found that paper." Nora's heart began to beat harder. Reed took one step closer. "I love you." The words were simple. No flourish, no careful letter, no hiding behind ink. They stood between them in the road, with the morning opening around them. Nora could not speak at first. Reed rushed on, as if silence frightened him. "I know it is soon in days. I know it is not soon in letters. I know we have had more trouble than most people see in years. I am not asking you to answer because danger pushed us close, or because you feel sorry for me, or because the town now thinks it has earned a sweeter ending after nearly ruining us." He gave a shaky breath. "I love you because you see me clearly and do not let me hide. I love you because you speak hard truth and still touch broken things gently. I love you because you make me want to be the kind of man your faith deserves." Nora's eyes filled. "Reed, if you cannot say it back, I will still be your neighbor. I will still mend the pie dish. I will still write if letters are easier." His voice broke. "But I could not let one more lie speak louder than the truest thing in me." A tear slipped down Nora's cheek. She thought of Peter, not as a wall now, but as a room in her heart that would always hold light. She thought of the woman she had been after he died, moving carefully through a life everyone else had already named for her. She thought of the letters tied in blue ribbon, of Reed's hand over hers at the bridge, of his face when Tommy was safe. Then she stepped close and placed her palm against his chest. "I love you too," she whispered. Reed closed his eyes like the words had reached a place no medicine ever could. Nora smiled through tears. "I think I started loving you before I knew your face." His hand covered hers, and now I know your face. That makes it worse." A laugh broke out of him, soft and disbelieving. Then he bent his head and kissed her. It was not desperate like fear. It was not hurried by danger. It was slow, tender, and trembling with relief. The kind of kiss that felt less like an ending and more like a door opening. When they parted, Reed rested his forehead against hers. "I have nothing fine to offer you," he said. "My name is still half mended. My ranch is barely standing. My past is a mess of ledgers and old shame." Nora looked toward the fields between their houses. "I have a farm with a leaking roof, a town that owes me several apologies, and a pie dish in pieces." Reed smiled. "That sounds like a start." "It sounds like work." "I am good at work." "I know," she brushed dust from his collar. "That is one of your better qualities." They walked home hand in hand. For the first time, Nora did not care who saw. But peace, when it came carefully. Wade was transferred to county court that morning. Silas Creed gave a statement against him in exchange for mercy, confirming the forged contracts, the false handbills, and the plan to trap Reed through Nora's reputation. Mara filed for legal separation with Sheriff Bell's help and agreed to testify. The ledgers from the trunk began clearing Reed's name one page at a time. Cedar Hollow changed slowly. Some people apologized. Some avoided Nora because shame is easier to hide than admit. Some still whispered, but softer now and with less confidence. Reed stayed at the Pike place, though the land no longer felt haunted by old lies. Nora visited often in daylight, bringing coffee, mending cloth, and once, with a shy smile, a new apple pie in a borrowed dish. Reed took one bite and closed his eyes. "That good?" she asked. "Better than the one you dropped." She laughed and swatted his shoulder with a dish towel. Mara and Tommy stayed with Nora for 2 weeks before moving into the small back cottage behind the church until the court settled matters. Tommy followed Reed whenever he could, asking questions about horses, fences, and why grown men sometimes cried when they were happy. Reed always answered him honestly. "Because happy can hurt too," he told the boy one afternoon, "when you thought you lost it for good." Nora heard from the porch and loved him more for it. Still, one matter remained unfinished. The pie dish. Reed had been mending it at night, piece by piece, using thin wire and careful glue. He refused to let Nora see it until it was done. 3 weeks after Wade's arrest, he came to her porch at sunset with the dish wrapped in cloth. Nora opened it slowly. The dish was whole again, but the cracks remained, fine white lines running through the ceramic like a map of everything it had survived. "It will not hold a pie," Reed said quickly. "Not safely, but it can sit on a shelf." Nora ran her fingers over the mended places. "It is beautiful. It is broken. So are we." He looked at her. She lifted the dish carefully, "Still worth keeping." Reed's eyes softened with such open feeling that Nora had to look away or cry. From the road came the sound of a wagon approaching. Sheriff Bell drove it himself, with Deputy Hart riding beside him. Behind them, another wagon followed, carrying Mara, Tommy, Margaret, and Pastor Williams. Nora frowned. "What is this?" Reed looked suddenly nervous. "Too nervous." "Reed." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I may have asked a few people to come by." "For what?" Before he could answer, Tommy jumped down from the wagon holding a bundle of wildflowers nearly bigger than his chest. "Uncle Reed said not to tell," the boy announced. Margaret climbed down behind him, grinning. Tommy lasted longer than I expected. Nora turned back to Reed. He stood at the bottom of her porch steps, hat in hand, looking more frightened than he had on the broken bridge. "Nora Whitcomb," he said. Her breath caught. Reed stepped onto the first stair. "I know Wade forged one license with our names to make love look like a crime. I know this town has seen enough lies written on paper, so I thought maybe the truth should be spoken out loud, in front of people who know what it cost us to get here." Nora's hand flew to her mouth. Reed did not kneel. His injured leg still would not allow it. Instead, he stood straight, humble, and steady. "I do not ask you to forget Peter. I do not ask you to carry my past like it belongs to you. I ask only for the chance to build something honest beside you. Letters when words are hard. Coffee when mornings are cold. Work when fences break. Silence when grief visits. Laughter when it finally comes back." His voice trembled. "Will you marry me, Nora? Not because Wade put our names on a lie, but because I want to spend the rest of my life making those names true in every way that matters." Nora could not see him clearly through her tears. The town, the past, the fear, the dead, the lies, the broken dish in her hands, all of it gathered in one breath. And just as she opened her mouth to answer, a rider came hard down the road, waving a telegram over his head. "Sheriff," he shouted, "telegram from county court." Sheriff Bell took it, read it, and his face changed. Reed turned slowly. The sheriff looked from the paper to them. "Wade escaped during transfer," he said. Nora's heart stopped. "He is headed this way." The word struck Nora harder than any gunshot could have. "Wade escaped during transfer. He is headed this way." For one frozen moment, the porch, the wagons, the wildflowers in Tommy's arms, the mended pie dish in Nora's hands, and Reed standing before her with his heart open all became part of the same cruel joke. The past had broken loose again, just when the future had finally dared to speak. Reed turned toward the road. His face changed in an instant. The tender fear of his proposal vanished. In its place came the sharp, steady look of a man who had survived shame, lies, and a broken bridge, and would not let the same darkness reach the people he loved twice. Sheriff Bell folded the telegram. He overpowered a deputy near the creek road, took a horse. If he keeps his pace, he could be here before dusk. Mara pulled Tommy close. The boy's flowers fell to the ground, scattering yellow petals across the dust. Reed stepped toward them. "Take Mara and Tommy inside." "No," Nora said. Everyone looked at her. Her voice did not shake. That surprised even her. "No more hiding in kitchens while Wade Harlan decides who gets to be afraid. We are not running from a man whose only power is making people stand alone." Reed's eyes met hers. "Nora, this is different." "Yes, it is." She set the mended pie dish carefully on the porch rail. "Because this time he is not meeting shame, he is not meeting gossip, he is meeting all of us." Sheriff Bell studied her for half a breath, then gave a short nod. "Mrs. Whitcomb is right. Wade wants panic. We give him order." The next 20 minutes moved with a strange calm. Deputy Hart rode to gather men from town. Sheriff Bell sent Margaret and Pastor Williams to take Mara and Tommy to the church, where half the town would be waiting. Reed hated letting them out of his sight, but Mara touched his arm. "You brought my son back once," she said softly. "Now let the town help keep him." Tommy reached for Reed and hugged him hard around the waist. "Don't let Papa hurt Miss Nora." Reed's throat worked. He knelt carefully despite the pain in his leg and took the boy's small shoulders. "I won't," he said, "and neither will this town." When the wagons rolled away, Nora and Reed were left in the yard with Sheriff Bell, Deputy Hart, and 3 ranchers who had once crossed the street to avoid Reed. Now they stood beside him with rifles lowered, eyes fixed on the road. The sun sank red behind the cottonwoods. Nora stood on the porch, not because anyone had placed her there, but because she chose it. The Mendy dish rested beside her. It caught the last light in its cracks, shining faintly like a thing broken and still unashamed. Reed came up the steps. "You never answered me," he said quietly. Nora looked at him. "You asked at a difficult time." A tired smile touched his mouth. "I have a talent for that." She reached for his hand. "Ask me again when the road is clear." His fingers closed around hers. "I will." Hoofbeats sounded before either of them could say more. One horse. Vast. Every man in the yard went still. Wade Harlan came into view at the bend, riding low in the saddle, coat torn, hat gone, face wild with sweat and dust. He reined hard near the gate when he saw the waiting men. For the first time, Wade did not find a crowd ready to believe him. He found a town ready to witness him. Sheriff Bell stepped forward. "Wade Harlan, get down." Wade laughed, breathless and bitter. "You all look proud of yourselves." "Get down," the sheriff repeated. Wade's eyes found Reed on the porch, then Nora, his mouth twisted. "Still playing house with the widow, brother." Reed stepped down into the yard. Nora's hand tightened around the porch rail, but she did not call him back. Reed stopped several paces from the gate. "It is over, Wade." "Over?" Wade shouted. "You stole my wife, my son, my name, and now you stand there talking about over." "I stole nothing from you." "You always do this." Wade's voice cracked. "You stand there looking wounded and decent until everyone forgets what you are. Elise pitied you. Father favored your honesty. Mara listened to your sad little truths. Now Nora looks at you like you are some wounded hero." Reed's face tightened, but he did not break. "No," he said. "Nora looks at me like a man. That is what you never understood. Love is not pity. It is not control. It is not ownership. It is seeing someone clearly and still choosing to stay." Wade's eyes glittered. "Then let her choose after I tell the rest." Nora felt the yard shift. Reed went still. Wade smiled slowly, sensing the wound. "He never told you, did he? The night Elise died, she begged him to send for a doctor sooner. He waited, said the storm was too bad, said morning would be safer. Morning came and she was gone." A low murmur moved through the men. Nora looked at Reed. His face had gone white. Wade leaned forward in the saddle. "Ask him. Ask your honest cowboy why his wife died before help came." Reed closed his eyes. For one painful breath, Nora understood. This was the last truth he had not spoken, the deepest guilt, the one beneath all the others. Reed opened his eyes and looked at her, not at Wade. "It is true," he said quietly. "Elise begged me to ride for the doctor. The snow was blinding. The horse had already fallen once. I thought if I left she might die alone. If I stayed, maybe I could keep her warm until dawn." His voice broke. "I chose wrong. By morning the road was clear enough, but she was too far gone." Nora stepped off the porch. Wade's smile widened. "There, now you know." "Yes," Nora said. She walked past Reed and faced Wade herself. "Now I know he stayed with his dying wife because every choice before him was cruel. I know he carried that guilt instead of turning it into a weapon. I know he told the truth when a lie would have protected him." Her voice grew stronger. "And I know the difference between a man who made a painful choice in a storm and a man who hurt people on purpose in clear daylight." Wade's smile collapsed. Sheriff Bell moved closer. "Dismount." For a moment, Wade looked as if he might run, but there was nowhere left. The road behind him filled with townsmen. The yard before him held the brother he had tried to destroy and the woman who would not bend. Slowly, Wade dropped from the saddle. Deputy Hart took him by the arm. Wade did not fight. His power had not ended with a shot or a chase. It ended in the silence after truth, when no one reached to carry his lies anymore. As they led him away, Wade looked once at Reed. "I was the stronger one," he said, but it sounded like a question. Reed answered softly, "No, Wade, you were only louder." Then he was gone. The evening settled over the Whitcomb farm, with a quiet so deep it felt holy. By dark, the whole town had gathered near the church. Wade was locked under guard. Sheriff Bell had sent riders for the county marshal. Mara and Tommy were safe. The witnesses had given statements. The forged papers, the ledgers, the handbills, and Wade's final confession were all written into the record. Justice had come, not with revenge, but with truth that had finally found enough brave hands to hold it. Later, when the town lights dimmed and the first stars came out, Reed and Nora stood alone again on her porch. The mended pie dish sat between them. Reed touched one cracked edge. "I should have told you about Elise." "Yes," Nora said. "I was afraid you would see me differently." "I do." Pain crossed his face. She took his hand. "I see you more clearly." His breath caught. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Reed removed a small silver ring from his coat pocket. It was simple, old-fashioned, and polished by a nervous thumb. "It belonged to my mother," he said. "I had a speech earlier, but the day ruined it." Nora smiled through tears. "The day did its best." He held the ring between them. "Nora Whitcomb, will you marry me?" With Peter remembered, Elise honored, our past spoken honestly, and no promise that life will be easy. Only that I will choose you in every hard morning I am given. Nora looked at the man before her, the stranger from the letters, the neighbor at the door, the cowboy accused by lies. The man who had saved a child, faced his shame, and stood in truth when it hurt. "Yes," she whispered, "I will marry you." Reed slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled. Then he kissed her, soft and slow beneath the porch lamp, while the wind moved through the cottonwoods and the cracked pie dish shone beside them like a witness. Months later, Cedar Hollow gathered again, not for scandal but for a wedding. Mara stood beside Nora with Tommy holding flowers. Margaret cried before the vows even began. Sheriff Bell cleared his throat too many times and pretended dust was in his eyes. Ada Pritchard brought 2 pies and told everyone loudly that no one in town made crust like Nora Harlan. After the ceremony, Reed and Nora walked home at sunset, hand in hand, past the pasture fence that had once divided their lives. On the kitchen shelf, the mended dish waited. It never held another pie. It held their first letters instead, tied with blue ribbon, beside the brass key that had opened Wade's trunk and the simple ring box from Reed's mother. Every crack remained visible. That was why Nora loved it. Because some broken things did not need to look untouched to be whole again. And every evening, when Reed came in from the fields with dust on his boots and Nora met him at the door, the old house no longer sounded empty. It sounded like home,